My name is Marc Lafleur. I actually grew up in Cornwall, so to go from growing up in Cornwall to selling my company for $16.7 million is a pretty big contrast, and still trying to wrap my head around all of that. But what I can say is that being here today and being able to speak in my hometown for the first time is something that I really never saw coming. And especially if anybody here knew me back in my Holy Trinity days, you'll know it's been a pretty long road to get to this point. So being back and being able to speak here in Cornwall, I really wanted to talk about something that was near and dear to my heart. I didn't want to give, some sort of high level, just generic talk. I really wanted to give something that I would have appreciated having back when I was in school, or just in general. And to me, a huge part of who I talk to is exclusively first-time founders. Okay, so if you're an executive, or you're trying to IPO your company, or you're doing something else, or this stuff isn't relevant, that's okay. This is specifically for founders that are looking to start their first business. So I started really trying to think and be like, okay, how can I give you guys as much value as possible, something that I would have wanted to hear? And it started kind of going down the path of understanding how long it takes to find success in business. And I think that's a huge common misconception, is that so many people think that, oh, I'm gonna go ahead and start my company and be a millionaire in a year. I thought that, for sure. And that's not the case. And really, it's a war of attrition. To build a business and have it be successful, you're talking 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. So I started thinking that that's something that a lot of first-time founders don't understand. And it got me thinking more about how it's not just about how long it takes, it's about the sustained effort you have to give throughout that entire time. So it's not just about showing up every day. You've got to show up to be the best version of yourself every day. And how do you do that? That's tough. It's not easy to show up and go to war every single day. And I started kind of being like, okay, well, how can I speak to this, and what did I learn? And really it started boiling down to, how do you be the best version of yourself? How do you maintain productivity day in and day out? And then I landed on something that I'm actually really excited to talk about, because it's a question I get all the time, and I think it's the hardest question for founders to answer. And the question is, how do I stay motivated? So how does a first-time founder, first of all, even get motivated? And then how does a first-time founder maintain that motivation for, let's say, 5 years? My journey was 5 years. I understand now that was actually pretty quick. I think normally you're gonna be doing it for a little while longer, but whether you're on the short spectrum of it or the long spectrum, how do you stay motivated for 5 years? It's tough. It's definitely not easy. So I'm gonna dive into that, and I'm gonna give you guys some experiences that worked for me. And the crazy thing about these types of things is you never know it at the time. The only reason I can even talk about this now is because I'm now on the outside looking back on it and seeing what mattered to me. So I'm gonna dive into that. And please, questions, jump in at any point in time. I'd rather these be conversations than just me kind of preaching up here for a while. So before I dive into it, 2 quick things. The reason I love giving talks, number one, I just want to tell you guys this, is because there are so many people that helped me along my journey. The amount of people that just reached out of the goodness of their heart, or whether it was some sort of moral ethic of them paying it forward, or whatever caused them to do it, it was unsolicited. I wasn't entitled to their help. People just chose to help me. And the thing that they gave me that was the most important thing that I ever received, which might sound cheesy, but it was information. These are people that have done it, right? These are millionaires, they're hyper successful, and I was just this nobody coming along, and for whatever reason, they decided to share their knowledge with me. And I realized, being 31, I've got a lot of information that I can share, and I'm really excited to talk and share that with you, because if any of my stories help you even avoid one mistake, that could be a make or break. So that's number one. And number two is the fact that in high school, I didn't even know business was an option. So I think when we talk about empowering our youth and we talk about, how do we get more entrepreneurs, it's all about exposure. We just got to expose them to the fact that you can be a successful business person, right? And that was something I didn't know. So I love giving these talks because I get to touch on both of those things. So, okay, diving back into it, people always tell you also when you're giving talks that you should spread out your key points throughout the entire conversation to keep people engaged, but I think that's bullshit. I think I'd rather just give you guys the exciting stuff from the get-go, and hopefully I can keep you guys engaged along the way. So for me, when it comes to how do I stay motivated, there's 3 key things. Number one is understanding that purpose-driven motivation is the strongest and longest lasting form of motivation. So having a purpose, something that you want more than anything in this world, that's gonna give you a level of motivation that you can't get from anywhere else. So I'll dive into that. Number 2 is that you need to also engineer motivation. You can't just walk through life and hope that you're going to be motivated and expect to be a higher performer. You've got to engineer motivation in your day-to-day life. And then number 3, which is the elephant in the room, is that even if you're not motivated, you still got to work. All right, and that's the biggest thing I see with first-time founders and a lot of people in general, is that they wait for this motivation to strike before they ever decide to get any work done. So we'll dive into those 3 things. So the thing that I think that we can do really, really quickly is just have a high-level conversation about motivation. So the reason I think it's really quick is because I'm sure that all of you here have been motivated before. You know what it's like to be motivated. Like, you really feel like you can take on the world, you can accomplish anything you want to accomplish. The things that you don't want to do are easy. The urgency in which you attack tasks increases dramatically, and your overall work quality just goes through the roof. That's what it's like when you're motivated. Okay, you've all experienced this before. You've experienced it from something that was obvious, like you've done something very, very obvious that is going to get you motivated. And you've probably also been in a situation where you've had motivation come completely out of nowhere. All right? But the thing with that is that I actually think that motivation is a drug. And I think that's the relationship you need to have with motivation, because what happens when motivation isn't there? When you don't have motivation, you make all the excuses in the world on how everything would be okay if you just had motivation, how all of your problems would be taken care of, and all you need is a quick hit of motivation to get the things done that you need to get done. So it's important to have a healthy relationship with motivation, because if you become reliant on it and you only do work whenever you're motivated, it becomes a liability. So that's my high-level conversation on motivation. We've all been there before. We all understand motivation, but let's talk about how we can actually tap into it. So for me, the first point, which is purpose-driven motivation, is the longest lasting form of motivation. This is something that I wish I understood while it was happening, but that wasn't the case. Just like with everything, you usually see it in hindsight. So my first interaction with purpose and motivation goes way back to my days at Holy Trinity. So for anybody here who, once again, was around during that time, you probably know me as Dark Marc, a little bit of a different nickname than I've had back then. And to say that my high school career was a roller coaster would be an understatement, to say the least. Like, I spent most of my time in detention, failed almost all of my classes in grade 9 and 10, and I don't think there was one teacher out there ever that would have assumed I was going to graduate high school. And the thing about that was that it was totally self-imposed. Like, starting off, I played on both sides of the loser train. I was a bully and I was bullied. I had a mouth on me that you would not believe. Any teacher, any person, any student that would walk by would get a mouthful. I was this chubby, overweight black kid with an afro and sunglasses, or women's glasses. And to say that high school was rough, like I said, it was an understatement. So the thing that bothered me about that, though, is that I was okay with being at like the absolute bottom of the totem pole. Like, if there was 300 kids in that school, I was literally at the bottom. And I'm not exaggerating that. Ask anybody from back in the day. And the thing was that I was relatively okay with it for a while. I was never confused. Like, I knew that it was self-imposed. I knew that I was doing all this stuff myself. And the thing that really would frustrate me, though, was that everybody thought I was dumb. Like, that was the thing. Like, Marc Lafleur is an idiot. He's not going to graduate. He doesn't understand things. And that pissed me off, because it wasn't that I was dumb. I thought everyone else was dumb. I'm like, I don't want to learn these things that you're teaching me. I don't give a shit about civics and careers. I don't care about finding the Pythagorean theorem, which I've yet to use to this day, right? So for me, that was where kind of the struggle came from in high school. And I had things that I loved. Like, there were things that I really enjoyed. I was a huge gamer, so I really loved, video games. I loved anime. I loved playing with trading cards. And I think I did those things very, very well. Like, the characters and the storylines, I would study those. The skills that I needed to do well, I did well at those things. But I definitely had no burning passion or no desire. Like, it was just something I would do. There was nothing that would get me out of bed in the morning and be like, wow, I really want to attack this day. So going through high school, grade 9, 10, that was kind of the story of my life. And then come grade 11, I wish I could, give a better description of what happened. But one day I just remember waking up and I was absolutely fed up. Like, I was just tired. I don't know if something happened the day before or something happened that morning, and I was just tired of dealing with the shit that I had to deal with at school. So I literally went and looked in the mirror, and I stared in the mirror for 10 minutes. And I'm like, you're done being a loser. And I literally did this. I don't know what prompted it, but I just was like, okay, just be honest with yourself. You don't need to be this way. Stop doing it. And I just stared at myself in the eyes and I said, look, it's done. I'm going to change. I can change. I'm going to change. I'm going to make a difference. And just to be clear here, that's not my entire world changed the next day and everything was okay. But what I can say is that that did kickstart the flywheel of me wanting to change my life and live up to something that I felt like I could do and something that I could be. So what ended up happening was that I started being like, well, look, I want to be like the cool kids. And just to be clear, it's not that I wanted to be like the cool kids, because a lot of those kids that were cool back then aren't so cool today. So the way I looked at it was that I liked the idea of cool kids because the cool kids were liked. Like, the cool kids were admired. People wanted to be around them. People wanted to be part of them. And let's be honest, like as a 16-year-old kid, that's all I ever wanted. I wanted people to look up to me. I wanted people to be around me. So I'm like, look, I need to be a cool kid. That's how it had to go. And I started thinking about, okay, well, what can I do to, be cool? Like, what can I do to, just change my life and be accepted? And for whatever reason, I just landed on football. Football to me was like the ultimate easy hack on how to become one of the cool kids. If you look at a football player, they have all the friends. They make the big plays. They're fit. Everything about playing football to me was like, if I can just do this thing, everything will be figured out. So, of course, as this overweight kid, my first challenge was getting into shape. So I'm like, okay, look, let me spend the whole summer and try to get into shape. And I went through that process, and the whole idea was, you go to the gym and you lift weights and you do running, and it was miserable and I hated it. And as anybody here who's ever picked up working out knows, that first 2 weeks is literal hell. Like, you hate waking up in the morning, you hate lifting the weights, you hate the sound of it, you hate the people, you hate the trainers, you hate sweating. Like, it just sucks. You don't want to do it. And eventually though, after 2 weeks, you kind of get in the routine and it's fine and you go through it. So that was, the first thing I started doing because I wanted to play football. And from there, I decided to buy like every book I could on football, because I've never played football before. I knew nothing about football. I just knew the cool kids did it. So I'm like, that's what I got to do. So knew nothing about it. And now over weekends, I was reading every possible book I could on football. I was digesting like Football for Dummies, and I was watching every blog I could, and I was watching every YouTube video, and I was reading everything I possibly could. And eventually I made the football team in Ottawa. And I fell in love with football. Like, that became the sole reason for me to exist. And what ended up happening was that after my first year of playing, I was actually pretty decent. And I realized that if I ever wanted to keep playing football, I needed to go to university, because in Canada, you can only really play football in university at a high level. There's not really, there's not that much college football, and the traveling teams are obviously not where it's at. Like, you got to play university ball. Now, as a kid who failed most of his classes in grade 9 and 10, this is like a ridiculous challenge. Like, how am I gonna do this? Like, getting fit, that was easy. Actually going ahead and applying myself in grade 11 at this point, so I'm running out of time, like, how do I pull that off? But the craziest thing was that even though I hated going to the gym and I hated reading these stupid football books, I did it, and those things sucked. But I was actually happy to do it, because it was leading me towards this goal, this vision that I had of playing football. And eventually what happened is that I started wanting football more than anything else in the world. I was willing to sacrifice whatever I had. And at the time I didn't know it, I was just doing it. Like, you never know it when you're doing it, but I would stop hanging out with like the 2 people that I would hang out with. I would stop playing video games. I would just focus on everything that had to do with football, even the things that sucked. And inevitably, what ended up happening was that I graduated Holy Trinity as a Ontario Scholar, which is a 91% average, which is a pretty big turnaround. And it's crazy because as I look at that, I realized that even though I hated it, like, that's a difficult thing to do. And I don't think we give enough credit to our students nowadays. Like, running a business is hard, but man, like, making it through school is tough. Like, those assignments suck. And it's like a lot to digest. It's a different type of brain power. But to make that full turnaround, it was hell. But I was hyper excited to do it. Football had become my purpose. It was the sole reason for me to exist. That's the only thing I wanted to do. And I realized that it made me motivated to do the things that I really did not want to do. Because by doing those things, I was getting closer and closer and closer to fulfilling my purpose. So that was my first interaction ever with the power of motivation and purpose and that relationship. So the reason I tell you guys this is because a couple things, because this stuff is probably happening all around you without you noticing it. But it's very difficult to find a long-lasting form of motivation if you don't have a purpose. So for anybody here who's a first-time founder or starting a business, the number one thing you can do is find something that you care more about than anything. If you're looking to start a business and you don't care about either the thing that you're doing or the success or money that comes with it, or the impact it might have somewhere else, or whatever sort of thing that gets you going. Everyone's got that thing that deep down gives them a chip on their shoulder. If you don't want that more than anything else in this world, you don't have a purpose, which is okay. You can go through life without a purpose, but it's gonna be hard to get motivation from that if it's not something you want more than anything. And the thing about this type of motivation, the motivation that comes from purpose, is this is the longest lasting and strongest form of motivation. This is the motivation that 3 years into it, you are laying in bed and everything's on fire. You lost an employee, your funding round got pulled, who knows what might happen, but this is the type of motivation that pops up when everything else has been stripped away from you. When you couldn't imagine going one more day, this purpose-driven motivation is the thing that will get you out of bed and give you one more chance at going after it. So to me, it's a very, very, very important form. I've experienced it 1,000,001 different times. For me, I wanted to sell my first company before the age of 30. That was like what I needed to do. I was a huge loser growing up, and I really wanted to prove everybody wrong. So I was like, I gotta do this before 30. And for me, that kept me going during some of the darkest days. And once again, I didn't understand it at the time, but that was a huge part of it, is I had this purpose. Like, I needed to have a certain level of success before the age of 30. That was it. There was nothing that mattered more, and it was the same thing as when I wanted to play football. So that's purpose-driven motivation. Now, understanding that purpose-driven motivation is there for you, and understanding that purpose-driven motivation is the longest lasting and hottest burning form of motivation is great. But it's also important to understand that no matter how strong your purpose is, you will never be motivated 100% of the time. And the thing about motivation that we talked about is that when you're in a motivated state, your work quality increases, you're 10 times more productive. Like, I don't know the stats, but like, if you wake up in the morning motivated and you have to go work on something, how much more productive are you than when you wake up in the morning, you're not motivated, you're completely distracted, and then you try to go do that same task? So as a first-time founder, it's your job to be the most successful or the most productive version of yourself. So you've got to try to be exposed to motivation as much as possible, because when you're motivated, you do better work. I'm going to keep circling back to this. So even if you have a strong purpose, you will not be motivated 100% of the time, but there are other things you can do to help get yourself in a motivated state. And this is point number 2, where I go into engineering motivation, okay? If you just want to walk around and hope you get motivated every once in a while, go ahead and do that, but it's not going to happen that often. But there are so many things that you can do on a day-to-day basis that are going to help keep you in a motivated state. And the crazy thing about this is it's actually a different type of motivation. So I call this motivation flash motivation. All right. So flash motivation is great because you've all experienced it also. You'll talk to someone, or you'll watch an amazing movie, or you'll listen to a podcast, and then boom, you just feel like you got struck by lightning. Like, you could take over the world, and usually that night you're sitting there all jacked up. You can literally write a business plan in an hour, and you're like, okay, sweet. I'm going to start tomorrow morning. I'm going to go to bed, and tomorrow morning I'm going to light the world on fire. We're going to do that. And of course, you go to bed and you wake up, and what happens? You hit the snooze button. And you go through this vicious cycle of motivation, and then it just goes away. And you're motivated, and then it just goes away. And you're motivated, and you don't double down on it, so it just goes away. So I call that flash motivation, and it can be really, really, really frustrating. However, don't be mad about it. We should be very happy that you can conjure up motivation out of something as simple as a podcast. Or you can bring forth a motivated state, even if it's just for an hour, by watching a gorgeous sunrise, whatever it might be. But flash motivation to me is how you supplement that deep burning, long lasting, purpose driven motivation. And this is the motivation that is very easy to access. Purpose driven motivation is there, and it's strong, and it's underlying, but it's hard to tap into. Flash motivation, you can pull out of nowhere. You can pull it out of anything. You can see a nice car drive by and be like, damn, I'm motivated for the next 10, 20 minutes. So for me, there are 3 things that will help you with engineering motivation, and they're pretty simple: content, people, and habits. So content, I'll start with content. So how you can engineer motivation in your life. So when it comes to content, there was a time at True Local when I was working outside of the business. And what I mean by outside of the business is that everybody knows what it's like to work in your business. Everybody knows what it's like to work on your business. We've gotten to a point where I was working outside of the business. And pretty much what that means is when you're working in the business, you all know what it's like. You're doing the most mundane tasks. You absolutely hate it. You're not really necessarily moving the business forward, but you're doing the things that you need to do on a day-to-day basis to make sure that you're serving your customers or building your brand or whatever it might be. Once you get past that stage, you're at the stage that every founder wants to be at, where you're working on your business. This is where you're starting to work a couple weeks, a couple months, a quarter in advance, and you're actually trying to leverage some of the resources that you have to make your business better. Well, there's a part after that when you've got amazing people working in your business, You've got amazing people working on your business. Now you get to go and do the whole shake hands, kiss babies kind of thing, where you're pretty much your business's biggest champion. So you're doing interviews, you're working on partnerships, you're just screaming everything you can about your business from the rooftop. So that's at the point that I was at, and I was doing a bunch of interviews, and people would always ask me, what do I do to relax? Like, what is the thing that I do to calm down and chill? And I would tell people, well, shit, I watch TV. And I watch a lot of TV. And I swear, when I would tell any interviewer that, they would look at me like I beat babies or something. It was like the most offensive thing you could ever say to anybody who claims to know something about business. And I get it. Like, look, if you're a founder and you're running a company, you know, what you're supposed to say is, well, I meditate and I read books and I write diaries. That's what you're supposed to say. And that didn't work for me. So what I was always doing was that when you're running a company, like, it's tough. Like, it's hard. You nonstop, it doesn't matter how good the people are that you have around you, you are being bombarded with questions. You are being bombarded with problems. You have 100 emails to get through in a day. You've got phone calls. You've got tons of stuff you got to deal with. And I'm not complaining, like, I wouldn't have it any other way, but it's draining. Like, this is the way it is, and it's day in and day out, and you got to do it for years and years and years. So you get, you just get drained. So for me, when I get home at night, before bed, I need to just like veg out. Like, I need to just decompress. And for me, the easiest way to do that is put the TV on and just melt into the couch. So from like 9 to like 10:30, I'm like, don't talk to me, get the laptop away and just turn the TV on. I'm just gonna veg out. I'm not even watching TV half the time. I'm just sitting there like digesting the day. So once again, no one approved of this answer. But it's funny because it takes me all the way back to my university days. So in my university days, I used to watch things like Planet Earth. And for those of you that watch Planet Earth, it's amazing. And I loved watching it because it made me feel good. Like, I would watch it and, there's nothing that's more humbling than, I don't know, like watching a lion, have to go hunt for its pride of like 12 lionesses, and it's the rainy season, or it's the drought season, and they now have to go hunt like a water buffalo because all the zebra are gone, and the water buffalo is like 3 times its size, and it breaks its leg trying to hunt this thing. Like, it'll put your life into perspective. Like, life is pretty good. So it's inspiring. And it wasn't until I found this show called Billions. So I don't know if anybody here knows the show Billions, but like, I love that show. This is probably the most badass show on TV. And pretty much, long story short, it's about this hedge fund billionaire going up against, the New York State Attorney General or the U.S. Attorney, whichever it is. Anyway, the top lawman in the state, and pretty much this hedge fund billionaire deploys like his billions of dollars of resources to evade the lawman, and the lawman pretty much does every backhanded trick he can to take him down. It's just a cool show. And the thing about Billions is that when I used to watch it, I noticed that I would always gravitate towards it whenever things were really, really bad. So like, whenever we were in like our really, really dark places at True Local, and I just wanted to come home and just veg out, I would just throw on Billions. I probably watched every episode 1,000 times. And I started, thinking about it, and I would turn over to my wife and say, damn, like, shit, we're having a bad day, but at least I'm not going to jail. Or, at least I'm not losing billions of dollars. And in that moment, I actually realized, I was like, shit, this show makes me feel better. Like, this show is impacting my mood. And then I started realizing, I'm like, okay, well, I'll go from like a depressed state to like a neutral state by watching this. It calms me down. It was motivating me. And when I realized that, like, my whole world changed. When I realized that the things that I watch, the content that I consume could change my mood, that's like a life hack. Like, think about it. I'm most certainly not the person to stand up here and say, put down the phone, okay? Like, you're not gonna beat Instagram, you're not gonna beat Facebook, you're not gonna beat Amazon or Google. Like, they've got it dialed in so well that they are gonna serve you content on a day-to-day basis. And look, if you find someone that has actually beaten it, listen to them, because that's better advice. But for me, I fall for it. But what I realized was that if I'm gonna fall for these algorithms, at least make them serve me, like, let them serve a purpose. So with TV, I started realizing if I'm gonna throw something on at night, throw something that gets me jacked up. So whether it be Planet Earth, that inspires and humbles me because I don't have to worry about going around and scavenging for nuts all October to feed myself all winter and a hawk might eat me. It's very humbling. It makes you very grateful. Billions will help you on the entrepreneurship side of things. I'll watch things like Disney documentaries on how they, made Toy Story or Frozen. You've got some of the most advanced animators in the world that are so passionate about what they do to bring some of the most world-class stories to life. I'll watch, right now I'm watching, Hamilton, right? So Lin-Manuel Miranda, one of the most amazing stories ever. And it's on Disney Plus also. And if you watch Hamilton and you aren't motivated, like you ain't living, okay? So these things, they're all out there. And if you're gonna watch TV, why not watch something that motivates you? But take it one step further. So on Instagram, right? We're all on Instagram, TikTok, whatever one you're on something. All I see now are sport highlights. I see inspirational talks by founders that I follow. I see cool cars. My playlists on music. I only listen to stuff now that gets me jacked up. I only play things that make me feel good. I only listen to podcasts that inspire me. And once again, this isn't to say to go out of your way to start consuming this content if you're not. But the idea of engineering motivation is that if you're already doing this stuff, at least have the discipline to find out what gets you going. And it could be anything from watching animal documentaries to following chess masters to watching academics preach at whatever school they're at. So if you're going to be stuck consuming content, at least cater it to things that make you get excited and things that make you feel motivated. So I don't have the numbers, but I'm going to go ahead and say that who do you think is going to be in a motivated state more often, and therefore in a productive state more often, and therefore have a longer chance or a stronger chance of lasting however long it takes to build a business? The person who has curated at least, like, let's say even 60% of their content to things that every time they go through it, it's like, oh yeah, sweet, okay, motivated, okay. Or the person who's out there, being fed news headlines and listening to sad playlists when they're feeling sad, right? Don't do that. You're just setting yourself up. So that's the idea of engineering your content. Now, people is the next thing you can engineer. Look, this one's so simple, but it's just a hard truth, all right? If you want to be rich, hang around rich people, all right? If you want to be successful, hang around successful people. If you want to be fit, hang around fit people. If you want to be a victim personality, hang around people who are going to make every excuse in the world as to why they're not where they're at today, right? If you want to be an underachiever, hang around people who always claim that the world could be better and that they could be better, but then do absolutely nothing to make that happen, right? You've heard it before, your net worth is your network, all right? Or your network is your net worth, whichever way you want to say it. But it's true, there are three types of people in this world. People that either take your energy, people that match your energy, or people that give you energy. Okay, so that's a very simple concept. Simple isn't always easy, right? So once again, if you're a first-time founder, you're smart, you understand that it's your job and your responsibility to be the best version of yourself at all times for as long as possible. If you want a better chance of being successful, what do you think you should do to your social circle for all the people that are taking energy from you? Probably should start limiting your time with them, or have a very select few people that you're willing to share that energy with. So I always like to say this one because it's not rocket science, it's not blowing anybody's minds here, but not a lot of people actually implement this stuff. Like, think about it, if there is somebody that you hang around with and they don't even have to say anything cool or inspiring, but just they open their mouth and say something, or you watch them have an interaction with someone and it gives you a couple hours of this flash motivation. Like, you hear them and you're like, damn, yes, like I want to go to work. We've all had that. You have a conversation with someone and the next thing you want to go do is be a better version of yourself, or you want to go work. Well, if you spend an hour a month with that person, what would happen if you spent 5 hours a month with that person? Right? So the whole idea here isn't that you're trying to be motivated 100% of the time. The idea is that if you can go from over the course of the year being in a motivated state 30% of the time and increase that to 40% of the time, I don't know how many hours that is in a year, but you're gonna get a lot more motivated work than if you were just going around and being motivated 20% of the time. So finally, when it comes to engineering your motivation, the last thing on that is your habits. Now, I'm not gonna spend too much time on this one because there's a great book. I'm sure most of you have probably read it or heard about it, called Atomic Habits. It's an amazing book on how to build habits and do all these great things, but I do wanna add to it a little bit. So to me, habits aren't just things that you do to make your life better. Good habits to me are things that are there in place, set in stone, that you know what you are going to do day in and day out, specifically when you don't know what to do next. So we all know what it's like. Like, if you aren't chasing a goal or you aren't working towards something, you're pretty much just spinning in a circle, and that's when chaos happens. Like, when you're just spinning in a circle, which is okay, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, we're there all the time. But when you're not chasing something, when you're not working towards something, you're pretty much just wandering, and that's when you walk into trouble. To me, good habits are the things that you continuously do even when you don't know where you're going next. So when you wake up, you don't have to think about, well, you know what, I'm not gonna eat healthy right now because I'm not really training for anything. I don't know what I'm training for. you have a good habit of just eating healthy in general. So you're gonna stay on that track. So then when you do figure out what you wanna do next, you've already got this good baseline of habits set up. So that's one idea on habits. But the next thing on habits is understanding that habits give you energy, okay? And I know this sounds kind of like woo-woo, oh my God, like kind of just, talking on my ass kind of thing, but it really does. And the thing that you got to think about here is that when you're, if your ambition is, part of the 50 percentile, so you're just got your regular ambition, you're going after your job, you're content with where you're at, you typically get your energy in like long milestones. So what'll happen is you'll get jacked up because it's your birthday. Like, sweet, let's celebrate. Exciting. My energy levels are at 50%. It's now my birthday. They're at 80%. Yes, great. Okay. So then what happens? Immediately, we start looking forward to that next big milestone. Maybe it's a promotion, maybe it's a vacation, maybe you're moving, maybe you're getting a new car, but they come few and far between. Every 4 months, let's say, maybe you get 6 of these giant milestones per year. So it's your birthday, you're at 50% energy levels, it goes up to 80, and then it's a slow trickle down, back down to like 50 until you get jacked up again on the next thing. And that's kind of how we live our lives. And there's nothing wrong with that. The problem as a first-time founder, or as a founder in general, is that you're getting kicked in the teeth every single day, so your energy levels are at 10% consistently. Like, that's just the way it is. And if you think it's different, then you're just fooling yourself. You are gonna be nonstop bombarded and beaten down and facing challenges that you never could have imagined, and you are gonna be running on fumes for 5 years. So what ends up happening is that if you try to live your life from giant milestone to giant milestone, you're just gonna burn out and die. Like, there's no way that you can go from, okay, I just had a crazy month. I've been trying to raise money. I did 100 meetings. They're all no's. I don't know what to do next. Okay, we'll figure it out. You're at 10% energy levels. There's no way you can be like, okay, well, my birthday's in 2 months. So, all right, let's make it to the next 2 months. It's not going to happen. So what I found was that you need to start finding energy in the small wins, okay? And what I mean by that is that small wins aren't like every week. Small wins are every day, if not every hour. Because if you're running on this 10% level of energy, okay, you need to wake up in the morning and somehow find something to milk some energy from, okay? And to me, that's where habits come in. So let's say you've got a routine, a set of good habits. Maybe you've got 5 good habits you do in a day. Maybe you wake up, you work out, you eat well, you write in your diary, you meditate, I don't care, whatever it is. Maybe you watch the sunset, maybe you listen to a podcast, whatever it is that you do. We do these things without giving ourselves credit for doing them. You are now in a situation where you can find energy out of these small wins. If you woke up in the morning and that's a big thing for you, then you woke up in the morning, give yourself a pat on the back. Like, is it groundbreaking and game-changing? Absolutely not. But if you can go from 10% energy levels to now 12 because you woke up in the morning, great, take that. And then guess what? You want to work out in the morning, so you woke up. Well, now that you woke up, you're now going to go and do your workout. Okay, great. Give yourself another 2% energy points on that. That's great. Now you're at 14%. But not only are you doing that, you are also stacking your wins. So think about it for a second. If you've done both of those things very well, what are the odds of you doing the third thing, which is you want to get all your emails cleared out by 9 a.m.? Well, I'm going to go ahead and assume if you did the first 2 things in that morning, the odds of you doing the third are going to be a little bit higher. So you can start stacking these wins. In fact, it motivates you to then do the next proper habit. So the idea is that not only are you being motivated by these habits that you're doing, so if you've got 5 habits in a day that you need to do, then, all right, I'm stuck over here. So if you've got 5 habits that you need to do, well, if doing one of them is going to increase the odds you do the second, increase the odds you do the third, increase the odds you do the fourth. And once again, the stuff isn't groundbreaking rocket science, but these are the minor things. Like, these are the details that you need to start understanding if you want to make it 5 years of building a business. You are in such a state of desperation and such a state of high performance that you've got to find every advantage you can get. So in my opinion, you're going to go ahead and go, let's say you do 3 of your habits, you're going to go from 10% energy levels to, let's say, 16% energy levels, and then a bomb's going to blow up in your face, obviously, because it's 12 p.m. and the sun, your morning's been too good, so something happens. And instead of going from 10% down to 2%, you're going to go from 16% back to 10%. And you do that day in and day out, and that can carry you for a very, very long time. So once again, the way to look at it is that by doing these good habits, you're motivating yourself to do even better habits. By doing these better habits, you're actually giving yourself energy. So for me, this all plays into the idea of engineering your motivation. So purpose-driven motivation, it's long, it's strong, and it is going to be there for you when you need it the most. However, it's very difficult to tap into. You can't just wake up in the morning and say, hey, listen, okay, well, all right, purpose, give me the motivation I need today. But what you can do is put on a podcast that might motivate you to go ahead and crush, the next meeting that you have. So engineering your motivation to supplement that purpose-driven motivation is what you need to do to get that extra state of motivation and hopefully get from 30% to 40% over the course of a year. And last but not least, we've got the idea that everybody hates. And this is where I see a lot of first-time founders really lose it, is that now they've got this understanding of motivation. They're like, you know what, I got a purpose and I can engineer my motivation, but now they've become addicted to it. And now they only want to do work when things are easy. They only want to do work when they're motivated. And the reality is that unfortunately, despite how good motivation is, you have to work even when you are not motivated. If you wake up in the morning and you feel like complete ass, it doesn't matter. You need to do your meetings. You need to do the work. You got to work on that spreadsheet. It does not matter. So that to me is a very important one, and you have to understand that, because I see that a lot. I see a lot of people that are like, they've got this fire, they've got this chip on their shoulder, which is great. Maybe they want to change the world, maybe they want to change their financial situation for themselves or their family, something deep, maybe they want to prove someone wrong. It's deep and it's there, and they're smart, so they engineer their motivation. But they're in the situation where it's like, well, I'm not feeling that hot today, so I'm just going to wait. I'm gonna wander around. And to me, it's almost like I see it. I'm like, what, you're just wandering around, like you're gonna get struck by lightning or something. Like as though if you wander around enough, you're gonna be motivated. It's not how it works. So, how are we doing for time? You're good. You can be honest. Yeah. Okay, cool. I got a quick little story then. So I got a quick little story now. So actually, this is a story from our True Local days. And this is an example of really when, once again, I didn't know this at the time, but this is where it really came true, where you gotta work even when you're not motivated. So at True Local, for those of you that don't know, we started off being pretty much a meat subscription box. It's like HelloFresh. You can go online, order whatever products you want. We ship it to your house. We work with local suppliers, local producers to get you guys sustainable products. But then we eventually moved over to providing software solutions for farmers, and it was this whole great time. So one thing that I'll never forget, and we now call it the 12 days of Phoenix, but it's actually the closest we ever came to losing the company. And we had the company built for about 3 to 4 years at the time and almost lost all of it in 12 days. So what ended up happening was that we're not a tech company in the early days, right? Even though when we go to investors, of course, we're a tech company. But what would happen is that we built our own platform from scratch. So we were tech enabled. E-commerce allowed us to do what we needed to do, right? And we built our company, fairly quickly. And when we built our first website, we were working with an agency. And we didn't even know what we didn't know. We didn't know what we needed, so we would kind of just build our website and we would just Frankenstein everything together. A bug would happen and we would just put a Band-Aid on it. Something called technical debt. I'm sure for anybody here who's technical, you'll understand what that's all about. But we accumulated a lot of technical debt. So we got to a point eventually where we had some money and we're like, you know what, we need to bring development in-house. And that's a huge transition. So a lot of people deal with it with marketing. You go from marketing, outsourcing your marketing, to bringing it in-house. Well, this was development. So we had an agency that built our website for the past 3 years, and we decided that we want to build it in-house. So we hired our own dev team, and it was about an 8-month project. It took about 8 months for us to get our system up and running in a way that would take all the stuff that we wanted from our existing vendor and bring it over to what we had. So we did this in 2 phases. Everything runs through our website. The front end of our website is how customers would place their orders. The back end of our website is how we managed everything, how we managed credit cards, how we managed products, how we managed what was on the front end of the website. It was everything. So everyone was very excited because the current platform we were using was like breaking on a daily basis. Like our team, we had about 6 people that were actually spending more time just diagnosing bugs daily than they were actually building out new features. This is where you get to. And everyone was so excited that we were finally gonna move over to this new platform. So what ended up happening is that we called it Phoenix, the new website, because the whole idea was that this new platform was gonna rise out of the ashes of our old dog shit platform that didn't work anymore. And looking back on it now, I think we kind of set ourselves up for that one. But what ended up happening is on Halloween, I'll never forget this, it was Halloween 2019, we had to take down our website so that we could start doing this thing called the migration. And what that pretty much is we had to take all of the data from our existing platform and move it over to our new platform. Now, this sounds boring and it sounds easy, and I always get the comments about, well, did you have a backup and all these types of things. So long story short, not only does the receiving platform have to have everything set up properly to receive said data, all the piping required to funnel the data needs to be set up very meticulously to ensure that you don't lose customer data or things don't get corrupt or God knows what else happens. So it's a very intense process. So we had to take the website down, and we were gonna take it down for a few hours, do the migration, spin it back up, everything's gonna be okay. Halloween comes around, our developers go to the office at like 3 a.m., I meet them there, we take down the website, and they start the migration. For 5 o'clock comes around, we all celebrate, migration's done, okay, let's go home, we'll come back, 12 or something like that, just to continue on with the day. It was just a normal day as usual. And our customer service team, so we call them consumer experience, our consumer experience team started noticing probably around like 2 p.m., we were getting a lot of customer complaints, like a lot of weird questions, like why isn't this working, what's going on here, I just got billed for this. And like I started getting this really shitty feeling, but I was like, these are probably one-offs. They were not one-offs at all. Pretty much by like 5 p.m., we had hundreds of messages. We had everything from like, I can't log into my account, to I just logged into my account and none of the products are mine, to we had someone who said, I just got 6 notifications that 6 boxes have just shipped. We had canceled customers for years that were being charged. It was everything. It was the worst. It was like, we didn't even know where to start. So we call everybody into the office and we're like, oh my God, like let's start figuring this out. So a day goes by, 2 days go by, and we cannot figure out what's going on. Eventually, for the first time ever, we took down the website. We're like, listen, let's just stop people from being able to go to the website, and let's just put up like email us if you need anything. So we're triaging, day 3 comes around, and like we still couldn't figure out what was going on. And like this started being bad. I'm like, there is no way we're gonna survive this. Like people are being billed that haven't been with us. It was a horrible situation. So I remember going home, and that was the lowest point I'd ever been. We just killed it. Like we were doing really well. We just raised a bunch of money. We had a bunch of customers. We were growing. Like I said, what was it? Yeah, it was actually 2018, I think. So it was before the pandemic, and we were just on cloud 9, and we were watching as our entire website and all of our data was just being flushed down the drain. And it got to a point probably on day 4 or 5 where we realized, I'm not gonna get too technical here, but what started happening is that we use a payment processor called Stripe. And the whole idea was that our previous website allowed Stripe to command all of the stuff. So pretty much Stripe would dictate when customers are billed, how customers are charged, what credit card, all this type of stuff. And the new system that we were using, we were gonna dictate how things were being billed, and Stripe was just gonna process it. Long story short, it got to a point where we realized all the wires were tangled. The database that was supposed to accept the data did not accept it properly. The piping that was so we didn't have all the data we were supposed to have. The data that came over, we didn't get all of it because the piping was messed up. And the relationship between the front end of our website, where people would input their actions, so when people go to their account and make changes and requests, was not connected to the back end of our website, which would accept those requests and let us know what to ship out, which was not connected to the payment processor. It was honestly the worst possible case scenario. And on day like 5 or 6, I remember like I was just like in a hole. And every morning we were showering at the office. We called it 12 Days of Phoenix. We pretty much stayed at the office for 12 days. So, later on we'd leave at midnight, come back at like 5, and every night I would drive away and be like, wow, we built this company over 3 or 4 years, we're about to lose it in a week. And it was bad. And, I like to think that I can kind of keep a straight face on a lot of things, but this was a really, really tough time. And the last thing I wanted to be doing was going into the office because I didn't have any answers. We didn't know what to do. So every single day I would drag my ass out of bed and somehow make it to the office and just try to untangle wires. Just like, let's try this, try that. Anyway, long story short, probably like day 7 or 8, we decided like, let's just cut it all off. We're gonna sever the connection between our website and Stripe, which is a big deal because if we did that and it didn't work, we've lost all of our customer data. We would then have to go back and call our tens of thousands of customers, like, hey, sorry, by the way, can we get your credit card so we can get your account back set up? And for anybody who's in the subscription box, like that just, even if we lost 20% of our customers, VCs don't like that, investors don't like that, it's just not gonna work. And we had no idea if hitting this button was going to cause that to happen. And once again, everyone was like, well, what about the backups? Backups didn't help us, nothing helped. We had to do a clean cut. So Actually, on my Instagram, I have a photo, and this, I think, 2018, of the line of code that we had to write that would actually pretty much sever the connection. And we would know immediately whether or not our website was not working or whether it wasn't, or whether we lost all of our data. So fortunately, when we hit the button, everything was fine. We didn't lose all of our data. It didn't fix the problem, but it stopped the chaos. Like, we stopped the bleeding. Now it was about building back up. And this is probably on the 12th day where I was like, okay, we got a long road ahead, but we can go home. Like, let's just do our thing. And I keep thinking about it a lot, because when I think about this idea of only working when you're motivated, if I had showed up and had the mentality of, well, I only work when I want to work, or I only work when I'm feeling good, I would have done, I would have stayed home for a couple of days. I'd have been like, you know what, you guys handle it, we'll figure it out, blame the team, if it didn't work out. And the idea of making sure that you keep working, even if you're not motivated, is very, very important. So I'm getting the look here, so I think I'm running out of time. Long story short, look, it's very, very important. It's such a long journey, okay? And if you're looking to build a business, you have to understand that from day one. And if you understand that it's a long journey, then you've got to think about, how can I operate at the best possible level for that period of time? That's the only answer. That's the only question. It doesn't matter what market you're in. It doesn't matter what business you're starting. If you can be the best for the longest period of time, trust me, your competitors will fall off. Like, give it time. They'll fall off. It's a war of attrition, okay? So in my opinion, finding a purpose, something that you want more than anything else, that'll give you the type of motivation that you need in your darkest moments. Engineering motivation to supplement that, to get flash motivation, so being sure to curate your content, being sure to spend your time with people that are going to motivate you, and making sure that you have good habits, that'll give you the flash motivation that you need to just be motivated on a regular basis and have an increased probability of being exposed to a productive state of mind. And then finally, understanding that you don't get to just work whenever you want to work. You have to work even whenever you're not motivated. So understand this, like, as a first-time founder, you guys are taking on challenges, or anybody here that starts a business, you guys are taking on challenges that only really 1% of the population try to take on. And you got to understand that your challenges are always going to match your ambition. So if you're sitting around being like, it's going to be an easy path, it's going to be quick, it's going to be short, you're just delusional. It's not going to happen. It's going to be very difficult. It's going to be very hard. And your challenges will match your ambition. So you will face challenges that you never, ever, ever could imagine anybody else facing if you want to, reach for the stars. So it's your job and your responsibility to be the best version of yourself for as long as possible, because you're going to need it. So that's my story. I also have, so I was going to throw it up here, but I have a book coming out. Oh, okay, yeah. So anyway, I have a book coming out. So it's called True Founder, little play on True Local. It's a book, we got a book deal with Forbes, which is really exciting. Comes out February 7th. And pretty much it's called True Founder, what no one else has the guts to teach you about starting your first business, which is pretty much a lot of this stuff. That, the idea of work-life balance as a first-time founder, good luck. Tons of stories about, should you hire friends or should you hire from experience? How to stay motivated, working with dev houses, agencies, trying to raise money, all the stuff for a first-time founder. And I'm actually gonna give you guys all a copy of it, because I'm very excited to be speaking here in Cornwall. Thank you. Thank you. It comes out February 7th. We're gonna give you guys a link that you guys can go to. You just gotta fill out your address, and we're gonna ship it to you whenever it comes out on February 7th. So thank you guys for listening. Hopefully part of my story might help you guys along your way. But yeah, thank you very much.